It is an absolute pleasure to welcome author Cheryl Carpinello to our new series of author interviews. Welcome, Cheryl, who is based in Denver, Colorado, USA. And thank you so much for taking the time to share your books with teachers here in the UK. We're going to be talking all about the Guinevere Trilogy, and you will be sharing a read aloud with teachers, specifically from book 2 of the trilogy, titled Guinevere at the Dawn of Legend. Very excited about that. But before we get stuck into the books, tell us a bit more about yourself. How did you become a children's author?
Okay, I'm a retired high school English teacher here in the US. And so the ages that I taught were ages 14 through 18. And so one of the things that my kids always enjoyed reading in school were the King Arthur legends and tales from the ancient worlds. And so this is where I decided to do my writing for kids. I had a lot of kids that didn't like to read. I couldn't get them to read anything, but I'd pull out the Once and Future King and they just went crazy. They just loved it. And they also would go to the library and find their own stories related to the legend to read on their own. So when I retired, I decided that that's what I wanted to do. I've always wanted to write, but I wasn't sure what. And so I decided I'm going to introduce younger readers in the elementary ages to the King Arthur legend. And so I chose to start with Guinevere.
So what I would like is a synopsis of the trilogy. You've already mentioned a little bit about the historical connections, King Arthur. Tell us a bit more about the Guinevere Trilogy. What exactly is it about?
Okay, book 1 is Guinevere, we'll cover up that unicorn, on the eve of legend. And it introduces readers to Guinevere at age 12. And on the eve of her 13th birthday, she finds out that she is engaged to be married to an older man. And Guinevere is a girl who thinks from the heart and then from the head, if she even gets that far. Usually it's just from the heart. And so when she's told this, she rebels. And her best friend Sedwin run away. Well, to bypass their runaway and their talking, they also learn the legend of the red deer and the unicorn. And it tells readers that there are unicorns in the world today and why you never see them. And in book 2, we have Guinevere and Sedwin on the eve of, or on the, at the dawn of legend. And you'll probably recognize that picture from Stonehenge. They go on their own adventure against the wishes of Guinevere's father and the king. And they head out to see the magical stones and hopefully the goddess on the equinox. And while they are on this innocent outing, it becomes very dangerous and very deadly for them and others. Towards the end of book 2, young Sedwin decides to take it upon himself to become the knight he always wanted to be, to protect not only Guinevere, his friend and future queen, but also the children from the castle who get thrown into this turmoil. And he chooses to become a knight on his own and to do everything that the knight has to do. And then in the final book of the trilogy, Guinevere the Legend, we find Guinevere and Sedwin separated by the English Channel. Sedwin and the children of the castle have been taken by renegades over to Gaul or France to be sold as slaves. And Sedwin's job as the knight is to protect not only the children and himself, but to keep them together, because he knows that his friend Guinevere will come for them. And bear in mind that Sedwin is 11 and Guinevere is 15. So that's quite an assumption on his part that she's going to protect them. And Guinevere, as I said, thinks from the heart first. And so when her father tells her explicitly, no, we're not going after him, she goes off on her own to make her own way to France to rescue her friend Sedwin. I wrote book 1 without ever visiting England. Before I wrote book 2, I made sure we came over, and we virtually almost followed Guinevere and Sedwin's path throughout southern England. So it was quite an experience to add that real life experience to the books.
Intriguing books. It all sounds very adventurous. I love all the cross references as well to essentially the history of the United Kingdom. There's lots going on there that will read very familiar to the children when they access text over here. So what would you like children to enjoy most about reading all three of these books?
I want them to understand that the King Arthur legend never goes away. It has been around forever. And every year there's 2 or 3 different mediums that pick up the King Arthur legend and puts it out there, not just for kids, but for adults. Gaming, movies, books, graphic novels, it's all over the place. And the kids really do enjoy it. One of their favorite characters is Merlin. And when I tell them that he lives backwards in time, we can spend a whole class period discussing how that is possible and how can he do that. And you know, it's very intriguing for them. But I think the overall theme in the book is more about friendship and loyalty. And that is definitely seen in everything that Cedwin and Guinevere do. All the decisions that they make are based on loyalty and friendship. And when I say loyalty, it's not just Guinevere's loyalty to Cedwin or Cedwin's loyalty to Guinevere. It's the loyalty to everything that they will come to stand for in the future, should they make it that far.
So, as you're aware, Cheryl, reading for pleasure is quite an important part of the national curriculum here in the UK. We, as teachers, ensure that children have access to a wide variety of books and that they enjoy reading. However, we also have to balance between reading for pleasure and reading for understanding. So what I would like to find out is, how would you see your books best placed in terms of the British national curriculum within the classroom setting? What do you think teachers would benefit from in terms of using these books to develop reading comprehension?
Okay. All of the books come with detailed pages at the end with questions for discussion, enrichment, and writing. Books 2 and 3 also have sections on places and things mentioned in the story. For instance, in book 2, it talks about, let me find it here, sorry. The Cadbury Castle, which is an actual castle in England. It talks about Glastonbury Abbey and the Tor, Weymouth Bay. I use a lot of actual places in England for that. And in book 3, the kids get a look at armor, the cave paintings in France. In fact, although it's in black and white, it's an actual cave painting from one of the prehistoric caves in France. They also get the opportunity, at least from over here, and I think from over there, that stone circles like Stonehenge are not just in England. France has a number of them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they play a part in the story.
Yes.
To connect the Guinevere and Cedwin together. So there's a lot of historical references there. Teachers can hone on the point that all decisions that we make, regardless of why we make them, they all have consequences. And those consequences may be good, they can also be bad. And I think that is a growing point, especially, well, for young people, but for adults too, that, you know, regardless of why you make a decision, you're going to have to be able to deal with the consequences from that decision. And I think that is such an important quality for kids growing up, to understand that and really understand that inside of themselves. All the way through the books for prediction, you can stop them at any point and say, what do you think is going to happen? And in book 3, it comes to the point where teachers can say at the end of one of the chapters, is Cedwin alive or is he dead? Guinevere, the decisions that she makes some awfully big decisions towards the end of the trilogy that she's going to have to be account for when she faces her father, who is the king.
Thank you so much. And I think at this point, this is the perfect time to have a break and actually enjoy a read aloud from yourself as you share with us Guinevere at the Dawn of Legend, which is the second book in the trilogy. So I'll hand over to you now, Cheryl, for your read aloud.
It's chapter 4 that I'm going to read, The Owl Screeches. Guinevere and Cedwin have been to the magical stones. They've seen the the goddess, and danger has approached them, and they have fled. And they have fled to the abbey at the foot of Glastonbury Tor. And they have climbed the tor to see if they could see any danger coming. And that is where I'm going to start, because Guinevere says, a rider, clutching Cedwin's hand. He's coming from the plains, not the north. And look, she pointed, something's wrong. See how he's riding? He's barely holding on. He's headed for the abbey. Let's hurry, we may beat him there. By the time they reached the abbey, only the rider's horse remained outside, its head down, sides heaving as it struggled for air. Guinevere and Cedwin stopped at the doorway, surveying the chaos punctuated by grunts, mild oaths, and screams, human screams. Inside on a table lay a man covered in blood, squirming. Cedwin wiped his hand over his lips, then repeated the gestures several times. Guinevere's face turned ashen. What's happened? Cedwin asked. The wounded man continued to moan and scream. Broken arrow shafts poked obscenely out of one arm and leg. The pair crept closer, fascinated and horrified. The monk called Jason was trying to cleanse the skin around the arrows. His face and arms were splattered with blood from the man's continually flailing arm. The wounded man's other hand grasped and pulled at Jason's sleeve. Ulrich and James tried to hold him down with little success. The man's head jerked back and forth in an attempt to escape the pain. His eyes, bulging with terror, locked on Guinevere. He spoke for the first time. My lady, you must take warning. Another scream interrupted his words as Jason cut the shaft in preparation to remove the arrow by pushing it through the bard's arm. Guinevere jumped back. Cedwin stepped in front of her for a closer look and realized he knew the man. They both did. This was the bard, the storyteller, who often visited the castle. At dinner on the night before Guinevere's 13th birthday, he told the tale of the magician who faithfully fell in love with a witch. The man had been full of mischief and enjoyed mocking Merlin, especially since the wizard wasn't around. Now his usual jolly face was ghostly pale. Out of lips that once told fabulous tales filled with mystery, deception, and love, came only screams filled with pain so intense it sounded as if 1,000 barbs were being stuck in his body at the same time. That's the bard, isn't it? Guinevere said. Cedwin, his blood chilling, grabbed her arm as she reached out a trembling hand to the wounded man. What's happening, Cedwin? Before he could answer, the bard choked out more. Lady Guinevere, he said, his voice hoarse from screaming, you are in danger. They come. Renegades from the north. He paused to take a ragged breath. Come across their camp. Heard them talk. They have been tasked to find you and hold you to bargain with Arthur and your father. Another coughing fit followed the scream. Guinevere cupped her hands around her ears in an attempt to close out the abominable sound. Cedwin's body swayed. Fear gripped his heart as if to cut off the blood flow. His face paled visibly. Thomas, the abbot motioned them to join him. I'm afraid the owl has done more than screech. It has brought danger to our door and to you and Master Cedwin, lady. If he is to be believed, the renegades were making their way to Cadbury when the poor soul stumbled upon them and was wounded. Luckily, he remained conscious enough to realize he was close to us. It is doubtful he would have made the castle alive. Guinevere's eyes darted back and forth between the bard and the monk. Cedwin stared beyond Thomas into the yard. He let Thomas's words penetrate his brain before he spoke. Will he die? I don't know, Master Cedwin. He has lost a lot of blood. But you two are in grave danger. Here is a small bit of bread for each of you. I've sent Samuel to get the horses ready. You can't go back by the plains. You must head east past the Tor to the end of the Mendip Hills. There you can skirt the edge of Salisbury and make your way to Cadbury. It will take longer, but it will not be what they expect. You must stay safe, lady. But the castle must be warned, Guinevere said. I'll try to send word once you're safely away. What about you and the others? Cedwin asked. I doubt they will bother us. Not many wish to tangle with God. You must do as I say. Follow Samuel and his instructions. Our lives are worth nothing if you and Sedwin are taken. If they hold you, then they hold the entire country in their hands. And then Guinevere and Sedwin start off. And Thomas says, Sedwin, you need to come back here. And so Sedwin goes back. He stands before Thomas, who gripped his shoulders. In the abbot's eyes, Sedwin saw his own reflection. Beads of sweat dotted his brow above narrowed eyes and trembling lips. His breathing accelerated, and the vein in his neck pulsed like it was running its own race. Sedwin, Thomas said in a low, urgent tone, you're of 12 years? Nearly so, sir. Thomas swallowed hard. Your goddess may have been right after all. It seems danger has indeed found you both. Sedwin stood taller, his fists clenched. You understand that under no circumstances can Guinevere be taken? Yes, sir. Sedwin's eyes never wavered. It may come that Samuel and Aaron will be unable to keep up with you. If that happens, leave them. They will be safe away from here. Yes, sir, Sedwin said, his mind leaping ahead of Thomas's words. Images running through his brain showed them all surrounded with no escape. You must call upon your courage, the courage the goddess spoke of deep inside you. Then you believe we saw her? Now is not the time to decide what you saw or heard. It is enough those words stay with you, for you will need the strength often. You must be the one who saves her, Sedwin. Thomas leaned down and placed his forehead on Sedwin's. As close as they were, Sedwin saw what looked like tears in Thomas's eyes. Even the two of you may not be able to outrun them if they find out you were here, but one would have a better chance if the other one distracted the men, Sedwin finished. I know my job, sir. Merlin and I talked about that before. I have to protect Guinevere. You are so young, Master Sedwin. Can you do it? Can you sacrifice yourself so she can survive? I can and I will, Friar. Guinevere is my best friend in all the world, but I'm also her knight, and one day she'll be my queen. I would die for her. Thomas squeezed his eyes shut at Sedwin's last words. He embraced the boy. Guinevere has chosen her friend wisely and her knight wiser. God go with you both, Sir Sedwin.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for sharing your wonderful book, which I can only imagine the other two books, how fantastic they must be in connecting that storyline around Guinevere. It's always such a pleasure to hear the author's voice behind the children's books. And finally, can you share where can we in the UK purchase your book?
The bundle is available on Amazon in the UK. The trilogy as a whole is available in one volume as an ebook. And you can also get that on Amazon in the UK. That just came out a year ago. I finally finished that. There's no way to bundle the 3 books and in paperback, so you do have to purchase those separately. But you can also get them on Barnes & Noble's website for the UK. Waterstones in the UK, for whatever reason, just has book 3. But so I'm not sure why that is. And then also on my website, I can sign and personalize books should the students like those. It takes a little bit longer to get to you, but they're much more personalized for the kids.
Thank you so much. And we certainly look forward to hearing more about your books as your writing journey continues. I will place links for the Guinevere Trilogy in this video. And thank you so much for joining ReadMaster for UK Teachers, home of the author's voice. Thank you so much, Cheryl.